Good morning, good evening. Whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you might be doing, we wish to welcome you to the Silverlight Show. The Silverlight shines to illuminate that which lies hidden in darkness. For those of you tuning in today, we welcome you in. If you're wondering what that weird box is in front of you, it's a piece of luggage, which is directly related to our conversation today. I've been thinking for the past couple of days about these people trapped in Afghanistan. And there's a certain element out there that's going to dismiss it. Oh, they knew what they were getting into. But at this particular juncture, I feel compelled to be compassionate. Because we're just coming out of a post-pandemic world that we're about to go back into. People are just being able to travel again. So some of them were trapped over there. Some of them went back for the first time, and all of a sudden the world went to hell on them. Went to hell sideways. So I do have a tiny bit of sympathy for them. I mean, the country's been in a state of chaos since the 1970s, if not earlier. We went through that earlier. But it really brings back one of the most wisest pieces of advice I've ever heard. See, I'm listening to the stories coming out of the Kabul airport and all the various places where people are trying to get the heck out of that country. And they say, I could go if it was me, but I can't take my children. It's too complicated. And this is really the key point. See, we're not talking about Afghanistan per se today, but we're just using it as an example of what can happen. There was a man I knew who is a survivalist, but not in the way that most people would think about it. He wasn't stocking up food and water in his basement. His theory was get your life down to 2 suitcases and a bunch of passports. And he said, you'll be able to leave at a moment's notice. And when I first heard this, I thought this advice was kind of ridiculous, but he was an intelligent gentleman, and Silverlight asked him to go on and explain further. He said, it's very simple. In World War II, when things started getting bad, if the Jews, the gypsies, and homosexuals and all that had picked up first thing, grabbed their 2 suitcases and their passports, and gotten out of there, they wouldn't have been in trouble. Now we know the situation is a bit more complicated than that. But the fact is, I started to listen to this gentleman. He had an interesting point. We're a very materialistic society. We hoard all sorts of crazy stuff. I'm sure everybody has that closet or that room somewhere where you've got all the stuff laid on top of each other because it's going to come in handy one day, and you just never know when. Children tie you down. I'm not telling anybody whether to have children. I am not a reproductive rights specialist, and I never will be. I stay out of family business as much as possible. I have opinions, but Silverlight's smarter than to share them with anybody, at least at the present time. But just adding children into that scenario complicates everything. Myself, I know I could, even at the height of the pandemic, I could grab my suitcase and I could go a whole lot of places where it would be very difficult to find me. A lot of places that would be very welcoming to me. Borders are not absolutes. The Russians weren't able to keep an iron grip even when they had the Soviets, when the Soviets had the Berlin Wall, they still couldn't keep people from going back and forth. They kept a majority, but not all of them. So while it's not perfect, having that level of mobility is unparalleled. And we live in a time where mobility is king. Look at this. You can throw a laptop, which would take you to about there. Then you got space for, clothes, shoes, and everything. And this goes right down to the floor. This is the bottom of the table. So imagine how much stuff you could pack into one single suitcase. And in the modern age, currency is pretty transferable. You can buy US dollars, you can buy bitcoins, you can buy all sorts of stuff. So now I admit, with a significant other and our daughter, I could no longer do that. Because yes, I can get out of Dodge very simply, but what about them? And what do I say to them? I'd have to convince them. I'd have to say, leave everything behind. What do we do to disperse property and assets? Which car are we taking? It's not a case of luxury. It's a case of which car we think is going to survive the longest. And then where are we going to? But really think about that. If you had to get your life down to 2 suitcases and some passports, could you do it? Now, I know a lot of Silverlight listeners are compassionate people, and they have animals, and you couldn't leave your animals behind. So right away, the 2 suitcases and a passport becomes 2 suitcases and a couple animal carriers. You're already slowing yourself down. 2 suitcases, just grab them by the handle, pick them up, you're ready to go. The second you start juggling animal carriers or anything like that, you're no longer moving. You're now moving in shifts. I usually like to take pictures of apartments and stuff like that. And I know there's a few bachelor apartments, but even somebody in a bachelor apartment in the modern day tends to have more than 2 suitcases and passports. Now, admittedly, when I first moved away from my parents, that's all I had. A couple suitcases, and I did have a passport. I no longer do, because I honestly do not believe that getting off the North American continent is a good course of action. That's my personal belief. You can choose to believe it, you can choose not to. But like I said, that was me when I was alone. Now that I have family and stuff, that option is no longer available to me. And this is what the situation is repeated over in Afghanistan. A lot of people could themselves, they've got the call. They're told, come to the front of the line. We got a C-17 here waiting for you. Let's go. But they have family. And what about extended family? I mean, if you knew a place was about to get overrun by the army and your mother or your father or your cousin, your brother, whoever it is there, it would be darn hard to leave them behind. So the only true freedom would be 2 suitcases, and that would be all your possessions. Now, you can still live a pretty good life. I mean, in a single suitcase, that's tons of clothes. Laptop for all your intellectual property. You could even have a couple mementos of other people. But, you're not going around with heaters and blankets and all that sort of stuff. It would be a minimalist existence. So, what would you be willing to abandon to get out of a war zone? And this is a really hard bit of arithmetic to do when you have so much stuff. I know in the particular room that I'm sitting, I'd be willing to abandon all of it. No questions asked. But a lot of people would say, no, I can't leave my home. In my case, I think a shelter-in-place option is more viable for me than the 2 suitcase option in my present situation, and I have adapted accordingly. So that if there was an army coming down the street, I would have to hide my flags and go out and greet them. Be non-threatening, hey, no problem. You want to take all my beer? Go ahead. You want to take all my food? Go ahead, because I'm in no way equipped to take on an army or police force or anything like that. Nobody is. Sure, when you get into a country like, many of the countries where they have heavily armed militias, it makes it quite difficult. But at the same token, armed civilians simply cannot stand up to a military force. They've got the tools, they got the technology, they got everything on you, and they're not going to stop. There's more of them than there are of you. Really, how difficult is it to have 2 suitcases, have all your life's possessions? Realistically, human beings accumulate a lot of crap. I'm going to pick on a Christmas tree, and I'm sorry, this is no offense to any Christians who love Christmas and all that, but I'm just going to pick on a Christmas tree. It's fundamentally useless. It spends 11 of 12 months wrapped up in a closet, taking up space. Just a useless product, and it costs, well, who knows how much a Christmas tree costs. More than $20, less than $10 million, because you can get specialty Christmas trees. And that's just for Christmas. If you're Jewish, you have a menorah, much smaller and, much more portable. At the same token, it's only useful for 1 month out of 12. These are the kind of things, as a society, we need to start thinking, do we really need them? You need a vacuum cleaner, but if you're on the go, you don't need it. Just looking around at random things here to make golf clubs. I definitely don't need to take those. If it's an emergency situation, I do not need to be golfing. An aquarium. Many people have pets. An aquarium is impossible to move, so what are you going to do? Just let all your fish starve to death? A parrot. Imagine trying to move a parrot. They're not quiet. It's not like you can sneak around with them. They need attention, and they will demand it. So, what could you do to get your life down to 2 suitcases and a couple passports? Start thinking about that. This Tupperware container here. Everybody has tons of stuff like this sitting around in their closets doing nothing. How many of these do we really need? Cups. How many people are in your family? Probably between 4 and 5, maybe less. Yet almost everybody I know owns like 15 plates, 20 cups, 15 forks. Why? We have dishwashers, we have everything we need. And there's so much crap out there. It's astonishing. I don't even know where to begin. And we hoard it. We're literally the worst hoarders in the universe. I can't imagine aliens coming from another planet on their spaceship or teleportation device, whatever way they use to travel between the stars. I can't imagine them bringing more than a couple mementos, and other than that, everything would be on their computer or in something like a suitcase, maybe a storage bin for their clothes, whatever it might be. That's going to be the way of the future. It's going to be possible for luxuries. I mean, you can bling out your phone. You can buy the biggest, most durable suitcase you can find. I didn't realize the evil logo was there. I should have thought about that before taking this, but oh well, we know it is. What can we do as a species to stop hoarding crap? And that's really the lesson for today. If you had to get your life down to 2 suitcases, could you do it? And if you could, how quickly? You'll have to consider that for yourself. I always think it's a wise lesson. But anyways, thank you for joining the Silverlight Show. We wish to thank you for joining us today, and we hope everyone has a fantastic day.